Engine Masters, always helping you pick the right camshaft. This time, it's the what, the why, and the power of single pattern versus split pattern cams. There is so much information about picking the right camshaft for your engine, and on Engine Masters, we try and narrow it down to one aspect at a time, make it simple as possible, and make a test that really shows you what's going on. And that's what we're doing this time with single pattern versus split pattern camshafts. What does that even mean? It is talking about the duration on the intake lobe and exhaust lobe of the cam. So on a single pattern cam, the duration would be the same on the intake and exhaust. On a split pattern cam, you're gonna see one or the other have a different number. Typically, the exhaust side is gonna have greater duration. Now, to understand all of this, you really gotta know what duration means. So the camshaft is opening and closing the intake and exhaust valves in the cylinder head. Duration is as simple as understanding how long it's opening that valve. And that number is expressed in degrees of engine rotation. So a 242 cam is open for 242 degrees of rotation. A 248 is 248. The higher the number, the longer the valve is open. The lower the number, the shorter the valve is open. Here's how I like to look at it. This makes it really simple. Think of duration as opening and closing a door. And think of people running through. So with short duration, you're gonna take the door and open it and close it, and maybe one person runs through. With long duration, you're gonna open the door, you're gonna hang out for a little while, and then you're gonna shut it. It was open a much longer time, more people ran through. That's what the camshaft is doing. Now, what is the theory about why you would have a split pattern cam and more duration on the exhaust side? Well, it's all about time. What we know theoretically is that a single pattern cam tends to favor lower engine speeds, while a split pattern cam that has more duration on the exhaust tends to favor higher engine speeds. Why? It's all about time. So I told you that duration of a camshaft is measured in degrees of engine rotation. Instead, think of it as beats of a song, and the song's gonna get faster and faster. Think of it this way, 5 beats. Happy birthday to you. So that's how long it was open at a low engine speed. Now I'm gonna start singing the song faster and faster and faster. And this is probably wrong with music theory, but you get the picture. So those same 5 beats in a faster pace, happy birthday to you, and then happy birthday to you. So that's engine RPM. In other words, the amount of beats that the door is open is the same, regardless of how fast I sing it. But the time it takes me to sing it is way shorter with higher speeds. That's the same thing as a higher RPM. The valve is open the same number of degrees of rotation, but it's opening and closing much faster, and so all of those gases cannot get in and out. Now, if all of this gobbledygook is too much for you and too confusing, don't worry about it. Open up your cam catalog and note that virtually every manufacturer has single pattern and split pattern cams right in the catalog. So you don't have to think about it. You just have to look at the results of this episode and go, you know what? I'm gonna buy the single or I'm gonna buy the split. Let's talk about the specific camshafts that we're going to be using. The first thing you should know is the lobe separation angle of the lift is identical in both of these. The intake lobe is identical in both of them. The specs on the camshaft that's in the engine right now are 242 degrees of duration on the intake and 248 on the exhaust. So we've got a split with the exhaust being 6 degrees more duration than the intake. That's very typical. Often the split is about 6 degrees for the typical muscle car engines that we deal with. The second camshaft that we're gonna test has the same duration intake and exhaust. It's 242, 242. But here's the other thing about adding duration on the exhaust side. It's not the only change that it makes to the cam. By making a bigger exhaust duration, you necessarily have to open the exhaust sooner and close it later. If it's 6 degrees more duration, typically it's going to open 3 degrees earlier and close 3 degrees later. So the valve events are changing. The other thing that's going to change is the overlap, which is the period of time when the intake and exhaust valves are open at the same time. So it's not that we're adding more variables to the test, it's that these are factors that come along with having bigger duration on the exhaust side. It's just what you get, and again, don't worry about that technical stuff. You can buy the cam out of the catalog and you'll get the same result. All right, let's talk about the actual engine that we're going to be testing here. It's a Dart 372 cubic inch small block Chevy. You know about the camshafts. The compression is 10.5 to 1. The cylinder head is a competition ported AFR 195. We do have a dual plane intake manifold on it. It's the Edelbrock air gap. And we got an 850 Holley up top. Now, importantly, we're going to be testing with 2 different sets of headers. The ones that are on the engine right now are 1 3/4 inch dyno headers. We're also going to put on this set of 1 5/8 inch tube under chassis headers. Now, I did this just because I want to see if there's any kind of variable on the exhaust side that would show different results on the 2 different camshafts. To be clear though, this is not mimicking a bad exhaust port, as we will be explaining later on in the show. As a matter of fact, the guy who's going to be explaining it is Richard Holdner, who does a ton of dyno testing. You can see him on YouTube. He is sitting in for Steve Brule in this episode. Steve will be back. And speaking of Steve, we also, of course, have Steve Dulcich. So I'm going to sit down with those guys and see what they have to think about this whole deal before we put the proof to it on the dyno. Richard, what's going to happen?
How about I don't know?
Oh, he didn't take
Single pattern, dual pattern. For me, I never pick a single pattern for any application. I always pick the dual pattern, but I'm open-minded and I want to see the test.
So you've never done this test?
No, not a single pattern, dual pattern. We've run single patterns and I've run dual patterns, and I just don't like the single pattern stuff. Sometimes we use that on a specific application where we want to make like lots of low-speed torque or something, but I hardly ever pick it for a performance application.
Okay, can I get you to commit or no?
Oh. Freiburger, Dulcich here. No, but actually I do vacillate. Sometimes I get this mindset, I don't know why I would want all of that ugly, useless exhaust duration on the back end of my cam on an emotional level, but then at other points I think I want the exhaust duration. And I really think as my cam gets bigger, I want less excess exhaust duration.
Okay. I thought your like innate sense of order would want the same lobe on every hole.
No, not always. But
right.
sometimes I just have this disdain for that excess exhaust duration.
Got it.
Diluting my mixture at low speeds.
His need for symmetry isn't overwhelming his need for logic, so that's awesome.
Overwhelming his need for logic. Got it. Well, it's that symmetry that we're going to test right now. The cam that's in this thing has currently got the split in it. It's 242, 248, so that's going to be our baseline, and later on we'll change to the single pattern cam.
Yep. Let's do it.
Run it. Test 1 coming up. Split pattern camshaft and 1 3/4 inch header. Well, here's our baseline curve. It's potentially the best one you'll see all day, so enjoy it while you can. We made 471.7 pound-feet of torque and 499.8 horsepower.
I want to talk about that a little bit. So many times when we run dyno tests, it's not 500, it's 499.8 or 499.9. And no matter how many times we run it, it wants to stay right there.
It's like running 1105 at the drag strip, right?
It's exactly what happens. Yeah.
11-second car, that's pretty good, Freiburger.
So ready to start tearing this down? Let's put the smaller headers on it and see what happens. 1 5/8, here we go. Okay, down to 1. The race is on. I think he's gonna shaft me.
Oh no.
Wait.
I gotcha.
No.
I gotcha.
No.
Yes, I did.
Here's header number 2, dinky and bad. You know what? Actually, I could win if I just let Troy do this. Richard, tag in.
We're just hoping you guys will get out of the way.
We're waiting on Dulcich, so in half an hour or so, we'll be able to test the headers. Well, there's our new power numbers with the small header. It made 469.5 pound-feet of torque and 490.9 horsepower. That does not seem that bad, but we gotta look at the overlay.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Interesting. Basically identical from 4,700 RPM down, and then it begins to diverge. So the black lines here are the smaller header, and the red lines are the larger ones, and the larger ones clearly make more power. Is it enough of a kill that you don't want to run 1 5/8 on your trucks?
Well, there you go, because for my Dodge trucks with the small block, the 1 5/8 is the biggest header that you can put in there.
Yeah.
So I would be comfortable with an engine up to 500 horsepower, but I think that trend will continue if you try to put a 550 or a 575 horsepower engine through a 1 5/8 header.
Yeah, that's gonna roll off worse and worse and worse as an airflow thing. Do you think that's airflow? Or is it pressure weight?
I don't know. Not only do we see a change in primary diameter, but we're seeing a change in header design. So how do we isolate the individual things that made this difference? I mean, typically when we see an airflow increase, we see this kind of change. It just gets better and better and better as it goes up. So I'm leaning toward that.
Me
but,
too.
You know, I don't think there's any way to tell unless we did lots more testing.
I know, which we're not going to do. I thought it was airflow, but to your point, these headers have shorter tubes, a smaller collector, and a shorter collector.
So other than that, they're the same?
Exactly. All right, next step is going to be more labor. We're going to tear it all apart and put in the single pattern camshaft.
Dulcich is going off.
This thing has a hydraulic roller cam in it, and the Dart SHP block is actually set up so that you can run the factory style instead of link bar style. You can see that it's got the spider that holds down the dog bones, which is what keeps the lifters aligned so that the wheel rolls straight on the camshaft.
All this is I got it, Reed.
Here comes our super cam. This is the single pattern 242. You can see, interestingly here, this is a billet camshaft. And if you look right there, you can see that an Ostempered iron distributor gear has been put on this thing so that you can use a standard gear on your distributor. So that's kind of interesting and something to pay attention to anytime you're installing a roller cam. Is the drive gear compatible with your distributor gear? That's lubed. Lobes are hitting connecting rods on the way in. And there we go. Freiburger in for the glory shot after having done nothing.
Sound backwards.
What? Just kidding. I see what you did. Here's our third test. We got our single pattern camshaft installed. We're gonna run it initially with a 1 5/8 inch tube header.
pattern cam.
Yep. All right, so our power numbers here are 482.6 horsepower and 468.1 pound-feet of torque. What's troubling me is I'm wondering if we're losing a little valve control at the very top. Yeah, it's got a little bit of a warble to it.
Yeah, you can hear it just a touch at the very end of the run.
You can. But I think we can all agree for the purposes of comparing our camshaft, let's not consider here on.
What's happening there,
yeah, exactly. So on that point,
we need to look at the other.
Pull it up, man! I gotta know.
Now's the time,
What is the difference between these two cams?
All right, here we go.
Yeah. What we're looking at here is the black lines are the single pattern cam and the red lines are the dual pattern cam, and look how it actually tilted the curve.
Almost kind of like you'd expect, maybe?
Pretty much textbook, I'd say.
Yeah, the single pattern cam makes more bottom end up to 45, almost 4,400 RPM. And then after peak torque, you get more horsepower out of the split pattern cam. You know what I was thinking of is, as a general rule, I always think to myself, intake lobe duration sort of dictates the RPM at peak horsepower. But is it also true of the exhaust lobe?
We look at like more exhaust duration as an RPM thing. For me, the single biggest thing for the camshaft is the intake duration. That tells me how big the camshaft is.
Right.
And then when we see the exhaust duration, whether it's a single pattern or a dual pattern that has a bunch more exhaust duration, I think, okay, that thing with more exhaust duration, it's gonna wanna rev.
But it's not changing the RPM at peak horsepower. You say it's gonna wanna rev.
Yeah.
It's like, my question was, does the exhaust lobe also affect RPM at peak horsepower? It doesn't. It just makes more high RPM power, even though the RPM at peak is the same.
So you're saying that the intake duration is determining where this thing is gonna make peak power.
Right.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
It seems like it, yeah.
And the exhaust duration is simply going to give you more top end power and a little bit less. This looks like a dual plane versus single plane test.
Good stuff.
Riddle me this. What happens if the answer is different with a bigger header on the engine?
Well, we saw more power from the bigger header with the dual pattern cam, right? So
Right.
are we gonna see that again with the single pattern cam?
I'm going with yes.
Let's go try it.
We gotta know.
Let's go.
All right, last test, we're gonna go put the bigger header on here, make a little bit more power, and presumably see the basic same trend.
Let's go find out.
I never know. I shouldn't say this stuff out loud. You knew not to say it out loud when I try and catch you.
I'll say it anyway. Go, Troy. Come on, Troy.
We win.
Dude, look at that.
Yeah.
It killed you, Troy. Swing in.
All right, we've got the 1 3/4 inch headers bolted on. This should make a little bit more power than the small one. We're gonna run it and find out exactly what that power curve does.
Big headers.
Show me.
Big headers, big power.
That's right. Boom.
The final test, big headers and the single pattern cam, 470.7 pound-feet of torque and up top 491.2 horsepowers. But that means nothing until I see the overlay. And of course, as we usually see, the larger header is making more power. It's the black line. The smaller header is the red line. While interesting, this tells you to buy the 1 3/4 inch header, but what we really want to look at is, I think, same header, large header, single pattern versus dual pattern. Red line here is going to be the dual pattern cam, and black is the single pattern cam, both with the 1 3/4 inch header. And once again, we're back to that tilting of the curve that we always talk about. You got the single pattern making just a hair more torque down here, and actually a much more significant change in the horsepower up top with the dual pattern camshaft.
And we saw the same thing with the other header too, with the small header doing the same kind of comparison,
Same thing.
kind of deal, rocking the curve.
Yeah. So theoretically, you know, people say that you should make the dual pattern cam choice based on that, you know, port ratio, the flow ratio from the intake to the exhaust. We did this on a good head and showed that it still makes a difference with more duration on the exhaust side.
So is that busted then? Do you think that that's not a real thing, or do you think it maybe we just ran it on this test and we need to test it on other things?
I wish that we had a crummy like stock cylinder head to test it with. Yeah. I think what's going to happen there though, and this is guessing, that I think what you'll see is overall the power will be down. The question I would have is the percentage of gain with the dual pattern camshaft, is it greater with a junk head than it is on a good head? We don't know that, but I almost don't care because what I know is that when I buy a good head, I want a split pattern camshaft anyway.
Yeah, regardless. What do you think?
I would also pick the dual pattern cam in almost every circumstance. And I really wouldn't expect it to crutch that bad exhaust port on a stock head.
So bottom line conclusion for the whole episode, I'm gonna say regardless of the header style, we ended up seeing the same results. The header liked it bigger on a 500 horsepower motor in this particular situation. And knowing what I know now, I'm gonna be far more inclined to always have something with a split pattern and more duration on the exhaust.
Agree, I think you can't go wrong. Look at the data. I'd rather have this than that, unless I was driving a daily driver.
I'm in the same boat as you guys. I'd go the split pattern anyway. Bigger header or smaller header. The difference was about, similar as far as what change in the curve was.
Nevertheless, it makes me want to test more stuff. Like you were saying, more duration, different heads, all that stuff, because that's what we do every single time on Engine Masters.
I trusted lies that wore a face. Now I'm the ghost you can't replace. Cut by betrayal, stitched by pain, but now our eyes unleashed again. You forged a monster in disguise, but I've become your last surprise. I've got a blade within, cutting through all your sins. I won't break, I won't forgive. This is the way I live. Your kingdom falls tonight by hands that once held your sweet deceit, your velvet chains are nothing now but rusted stains. I found my strength in shadowed cries, a warrior born from severed ties. You forged a